I tried to turn my back to that, but I just didn't want to share him. Simple as that. As much as he wanted to be married and have a family, I don't know if he was ever cut to be married.
What I'm about to tell you will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about Priscilla Presley and Elvis's marriage. Because while the world believed their divorce in 1973 was just another Hollywood breakup, the truth is far more devastating. Priscilla wasn't just moving on after Elvis, she was already cheating on him with another man while they were still married. His name was Michael Stone, and their affair began in 1972, a full year before Priscilla and Elvis officially divorced. Think about that for a second. While Elvis was performing his heart out in Vegas, believing his wife was supporting him at home, Priscilla was secretly building a relationship with another man. This wasn't some innocent emotional connection that developed over time. This was a calculated betrayal that may have triggered the king's final descent into darkness. Now, you might be thinking, how do we know this timeline is accurate? Because the evidence is right there in black and white. Priscilla's relationship with Michael Stone ran from 1972 to 1975. Her marriage to Elvis didn't end until October 1973. Do the math. That's at least a year of overlap, a year of lies, a year of Elvis living a complete illusion about his marriage. Picture Elvis during those final months of 1972 and early 1973. He's gaining weight. His performances are becoming erratic. He's increasingly paranoid and dependent on prescription drugs. Everyone blamed the pressures of fame, the isolation of stardom, the demands of his career. But what if the real poison was much closer to home? What if every night he came home to Graceland, he was looking into the eyes of a woman who was already emotionally and physically committed to someone else? The timeline tells a story that Hollywood has never wanted to acknowledge. Elvis's most dramatic physical and mental decline coincided exactly with Priscilla's secret affair. This wasn't coincidence, this was cause and effect. Elvis was an intuitive man, deeply sensitive despite his tough exterior. He knew something was wrong, even if he couldn't prove it. That gut-wrenching feeling of being betrayed by the person you trust most? That slow-burning realization that your entire life is built on a lie? That's what was eating Elvis alive from the inside out. And here's what makes this even more heartbreaking. Elvis genuinely believed he could win Priscilla back even after their divorce. He thought their separation was temporary, a rough patch they could work through. He had no idea that she'd already been emotionally checked out for over a year, that she'd already found his replacement before she even filed the papers. Michael Stone wasn't some random rebound. He was a deliberate choice, a calculated move by a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. While Elvis was pouring his heart out in songs like It's Now or Never and Can't Help Falling in Love, believing those words still meant something to his wife, Priscilla was already planning her exit strategy with another man. The cruelest part? Elvis kept trying to be the perfect husband, even as his marriage was crumbling. He bought Priscilla expensive gifts, tried to include her in his world, begged her to come to his performances. But you can't compete with a secret affair when you don't even know you're in competition. Elvis was fighting for a marriage that had already ended in his wife's heart. This betrayal didn't just end a marriage, it destroyed a man's ability to trust. Think about Elvis's relationships after Priscilla. Short-lived, intense, but never leading to marriage again. The man who once believed in fairy tale romance became someone who could never fully commit to anyone else. Priscilla didn't just break his heart, she broke his capacity to love without fear. And the most tragic irony of all, Elvis died just 4 years after discovering the full truth about Priscilla's timeline of deception. 4 years of knowing that the woman he'd loved since she was 14, the mother of his only child, had played him for a fool during the most vulnerable period of his life. The official story says Elvis died of heart failure, but anyone who understands the human heart knows the truth. Sometimes, betrayal is more deadly than any drug, and sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who destroy us most completely. But here's the thing that will absolutely blow your mind. Michael Stone was just the beginning of Priscilla's web of scandalous relationships, and her next choice would connect her to a family name that would eventually become the most famous in America. In 1975, just 2 years after destroying Elvis, Priscilla Presley made a move that would unknowingly reshape American pop culture forever. She began dating a young, ambitious Armenian-American lawyer named Robert Kardashian. Yes, you heard that right. Robert Kardashian, the future father of Kim, Khloe, Kourtney, and Rob Kardashian, the man who would later become famous as O.J. Simpson's defense attorney, was once romantically involved with Elvis Presley's ex-wife. This isn't just some random Hollywood connection. This relationship potentially planted the seeds for the entire Kardashian empire we know today. Think about it. Robert Kardashian in 1975 was already well connected in Los Angeles legal and business circles, but he wasn't yet the household name he'd become. Dating Priscilla Presley gave him direct access to entertainment industry royalty, to the inner workings of celebrity culture, and most importantly, to the art of turning personal drama into public fascination. But here's where this gets really interesting. Priscilla wasn't just dating Robert Kardashian. She was learning from him. This was a woman who had just escaped one of the most controlling relationships in entertainment history, and now she was with a sharp, strategic thinker who understood how to navigate power structures in Hollywood. Robert Kardashian wasn't just her boyfriend. He was her education in how to build and protect wealth in the entertainment business. The timing of this relationship tells us everything about Priscilla's calculated approach to love. She just ended her affair with Michael Stone, and instead of taking time to heal or reflect, she immediately moved into the arms of another powerful man. But this time, she chose someone who could teach her things Elvis never could: how to be shrewd in business, how to protect assets, how to turn fame into lasting financial security. Robert Kardashian was building his legal career during this period, taking on high-profile clients and establishing the connections that would later make him one of Los Angeles's most sought-after attorneys. Through Priscilla, he gained insight into celebrity psychology, into how fame affects relationships, into the unique legal challenges that come with being in the public eye. Years later, when he was defending O.J. Simpson, he already understood how celebrity trials become entertainment spectacles. And what did Priscilla gain from this relationship? She learned how to be strategic about her public image, how to separate her personal brand from Elvis's legacy, and most crucially, how to turn her past into a business advantage rather than a burden. The Priscilla Presley who emerged from this relationship was sharper, more business-minded, and infinitely more calculating than the young woman who had once been completely dependent on Elvis. But here's the part that will absolutely shock you. This relationship may have influenced how the next generation of Kardashians approached fame itself. Robert Kardashian learned from Priscilla that personal drama, when handled correctly, doesn't destroy careers, it builds them. The woman who had survived being married to Elvis Presley, who had turned a messy divorce into a platform for independence, showed him that controversy and publicity could be assets rather than liabilities. Fast forward to the 2000s, and Robert Kardashian's children would become masters of exactly this strategy. Kim, Khloe, and Kourtney built an empire by turning their personal lives into public entertainment, by making their relationships and breakups into content, by understanding that in modern America, being talked about is more valuable than being respected. Sound familiar? That's the exact playbook Priscilla had been running since her divorce from Elvis. The connection goes even deeper when you consider that both Priscilla and the Kardashians understood something fundamental about American culture. People are obsessed with behind-the-scenes access to glamorous lives. Priscilla made a fortune giving tours of Graceland and sharing Elvis stories. The Kardashians made billions by literally filming their daily lives and selling that access to the public. This wasn't just a brief romantic relationship, this was a masterclass in how to monetize fame, and both parties learned lessons that would define their futures. Robert Kardashian gained the insights that would eventually help his children become the most famous family in America. Priscilla gained the business acumen that would help her transform from Elvis's widow into an entertainment mogul in her own right. But if you think dating a future Kardashian patriarch was Priscilla's most shocking romantic choice, you haven't heard anything yet. Because her next relationship would last 22 years, produce another child, and somehow remain almost completely hidden from the public eye, despite happening at the height of her fame. In 1984, while the world thought they knew everything about Priscilla Presley's love life, she pulled off the most incredible vanishing act in Hollywood history. She began a relationship that would last 22 years, produce her second child, and somehow remain almost completely invisible to the media and public. His name was Marco Garibaldi, and their secret love affair makes everything else in Priscilla's romantic timeline look like amateur hour. Marco wasn't some Hollywood insider or entertainment industry power player. He was a Brazilian computer programmer turned musician and producer, quiet, intellectual, and completely uninterested in the spotlight that had defined Priscilla's entire adult life. But here's what makes this relationship absolutely mind-blowing. Priscilla managed to keep this man hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades, while she was one of the most watched women in America. Think about what that means. This was the 1980s and 1990s, when paparazzi culture was exploding, when every detail of celebrity lives was being scrutinized and sold to tabloids. Priscilla was regularly appearing on television, giving interviews about Elvis, managing Graceland, and building her business empire. Yet somehow she kept a 22-year relationship and the birth of her son Navarone almost completely out of the public eye. But the most shocking part isn't just that she hid the relationship, it's why she needed to hide it. Marco Garibaldi was 22 years younger than Priscilla. When they got together in 1984, she was 39 and he was just 17 years old. Let that sink in for a moment. The woman who had been groomed by Elvis when she was 14 turned around and entered a relationship with a teenager when she was approaching 40. The parallels to her own story with Elvis are absolutely staggering, but with the power dynamics completely reversed. Now Priscilla was the older, established partner, introducing a much younger person to her world of wealth and celebrity. She was the one with all the control, all the experience, all the power. Marco was basically a kid when this relationship began, and Priscilla had become the predator. In the exact same pattern that had defined her own youth. And here's where this story gets even more complicated. Their son Navarone was born in 1987, just 3 years into their relationship. Priscilla was 42, Marco was barely 20. She'd created a family dynamic that mirrored her own childhood in the most disturbing way possible. Navarone grew up with a father who was practically still a kid himself, and a mother who controlled every aspect of their private world. But the secrecy around this relationship wasn't just about protecting Marco or their son from media attention. It was about protecting Priscilla's carefully crafted image as Elvis's devoted widow and Lisa Marie's dedicated mother. How would it look if the world knew she was living with a man young enough to be her son? How would that affect her credibility as the keeper of Elvis's legacy? The control Priscilla exercised over this relationship's privacy shows just how calculating she'd become. She learned to compartmentalize her life completely. Public Priscilla was the elegant widow and businesswoman, while private Priscilla was living with a man who was closer in age to her daughter, Lisa Marie, than to herself. And speaking of Lisa Marie, this secret relationship created a family dynamic that was absolutely toxic. Lisa Marie was dealing with her own struggles with identity and relationships, and her mother was secretly raising another child with a man who was barely older than Lisa Marie herself. The resentment and confusion this created within the Presley family has never been fully addressed publicly. But it explains so much about the distance between Priscilla and Lisa Marie in later years. The most revealing part of this entire 22-year saga is how it ended. In 2006, after more than 2 decades together, Priscilla simply walked away from Marco and their life together. No dramatic public breakup, no custody battle, no media circus. She just left. Marco faded back into obscurity, and Priscilla moved on to her next relationship, as if 22 years with this man had never happened. Every single man in Priscilla's life served a specific purpose in her evolution from vulnerable teenager to calculating businesswoman. She didn't just date these men. She extracted what she needed from each relationship and then moved on when they could no longer serve her goals. The most disturbing realization is that Priscilla has never had a genuine, equal romantic relationship in her entire life. Every partnership has been about power dynamics, strategic advantages, or filling specific needs. She learned early that relationships were transactions, and she's been treating them that way for over 50 years. This explains so much about the dysfunction in the Presley family, the distance between Priscilla and Lisa Marie, and the way Elvis's legacy has been commercialized and controlled. Priscilla didn't just inherit Elvis's estate, she turned his memory into a business strategy, just like she turned every relationship into a stepping stone toward more power and control. The woman the world sees as Elvis's devoted widow is actually one of the most calculating relationship strategists in Hollywood history. She spent decades perfecting the art of using people for personal gain while maintaining a public image of elegance and grace. Every tear she's shed in interviews, every nostalgic story she's shared about Elvis, every appearance she's made as the keeper of his legacy, it's all been part of a carefully orchestrated performance designed to maximize her own power and wealth. The truth about Priscilla Presley isn't romantic or touching. It's the story of a woman who learned early that love is weakness and relationships are tools. She spent her entire adult life proving that calculation beats emotion, that strategy trumps authenticity, and that the person who controls the narrative controls everything. Elvis may have been the king of rock and roll, but Priscilla became the queen of manipulation, and she's been ruling that throne for over 50 years. The scandals in her dating history aren't just gossip. They're a masterclass in how to use people and discard them while maintaining plausible deniability. The truth about Priscilla Presley's love life reveals a woman far more calculating than anyone imagined. What other secrets are hiding in plain sight? Subscribe and hit that notification bell because next week, we're exposing the real reason Lisa Marie Presley never forgave her mother. You won't want to miss it.